we're not going to get abortion right until we get equal value for women, equal image
Mm,
bearers, and
interesting.
we deal with this undercurrent of hidden abuse of women for centuries, probably.
Abortion is one of the most divisive issues in certainly in America today, and probably in many parts of the world. Lots of different opinions in terms of, is it right? Is it wrong? When does life begin? Is it ever okay? Under what circumstances might it be okay? These are all really important questions, but the question that doesn't often get asked is, as pastors and leaders and churches, how do we respond to a woman who has an unintended pregnancy? Right? That's where the rubber really meets the road when it comes to the issue of abortion. We can have all of our ideas about whether it's right or whether it's wrong, but women are going to have unintended pregnancies, and it's going to feel to them like their futures have been lost, and so they don't know what to do. And unfortunately, and you'll hear this in the conversation today, only 7% of women and 16% of Christian women feel safe coming to their churches when faced with an unintended pregnancy. And so I'm really excited to bring this conversation to you with Angela Weszely. She's the CEO of ProGrace, an organization that facilitates learning experiences for churches in regard to the issue of abortion. And how do we navigate the challenges of abortion and unintended pregnancies in the world today? She's also the author of Becoming ProGrace, expanding the abortion conversation between life versus choice. This is a really great and nuanced conversation about abortion, and I found it so valuable, and I think you will too. Angela, I'm excited about this conversation. Excited is maybe not the right. Yeah, no, I'm kind of excited because I'm looking forward to learning some things and talking about a topic that we have a lot of questions about, and it's just, it's not black and white,
No.
It's far more nuanced than we give it credit for. But here's, okay, abortion. I want to start with your story. Like, how did you get involved in this work?
Yes, thank you. Well, thank you so much, Marcus, for having me on. And before I tell my story, I appreciate you using the word nuance, because that is the type of conversation we'll have today. Through my journey, I've come to see that pro-life and pro-choice aren't helpful descriptors for Christians to lead with. So I won't be talking about that. And I'm much more interested in the church. Are we resembling Jesus in our response? So I talk way more about that than the people making the decision. So I'm already tipping my hat about what I think is wrong about the typical historic Christian approach to abortion. Which my story is that I was raised very conservatively. And so, ultra conservative, very legalistic, can lose my salvation, and with that came a bunch of political beliefs as well. And so being pro-life was one of them. And through my journey, I got involved with a campus ministry where I was exposed to like Calvinist theology for the first time. So that was a real wrestling for me. So the understanding of the love of God. And then I found myself, after being burned out in that ministry, in the Vineyard stream denomination, where that I had more experiences then of the love of God, his grace. And so that's kind of the convergence just of my spiritual journey, which is why when I stumbled, and I mean stumbled, into a Christian pregnancy center 21 years ago, applying for a development job, it's why things started to feel tension even in that very interview. So I was coming out of some secular jobs at the time, and I thought this will be a great place where I can help women and children, and abortion won't be political, is what I thought. And my first conversation, I was a bit nervous because it was abortion. I knew that was the issue. So I did meet with a director of one of their sites. It was downtown Chicago. I can still see myself. It was a lovely office. She was lovely. She was actually a licensed counselor. And so her approach, made sense to me. But I remember being in the lobby and I found a brochure by a national organization. It was about adoption. But as I started reading it, I was like, this makes me feel uncomfortable, because it was all the statistics of what happens to kids who are raised by single parents. And that was my first jarring moment of like, wait a second, this doesn't feel like the Jesus I've just encountered on my spiritual journey, this is manipulating women. And, and I don't even know that I had words for it then, Marcus, because again, I was so being formed in these different streams of Christianity, but I at least knew it made me feel uncomfortable. So in the interview with the interim president and the board chair, who were both men, I said, "Hey, I found this brochure." They were like, "Oh, no, we're not associated with that national organization. They helped us buy an ultrasound. This isn't our heart. We'll remove that brochure. We love women. We're not anti-women." And so I was like, "Great." I took the job. And just dissonance, tension started right away. When I would explain to my friends, I lived outside of Chicago in a lovely community called Oak Park, very diverse. And when I would tell my friends I was working for a pregnancy center, was the word I used at the time, there would be this weird reaction that, again, I had no context for, like, what's going on? Why are people skeptical? And then I started finding out the ways our staff spoke to women weren't all like that initial counselor that I had met. They didn't have counseling degrees. They were talking about women in a way that felt condescending to me when I would hear conversations. They were persuading them not to have an abortion. There's all this stuff swirling. And I can still remember Googling the abortion issue. This is like 2005. This is so long ago.
Yeah.
I had a big computer, and I came across a website of an organization called Feminists for Life, which at the time, their homepage said, "Are you for the woman and the child?" and never knew where you fit. And Marcus, that was a Holy Spirit moment for me. I'm not
Wow.
kidding you. I started sobbing. I mean, sobbing. It was like all this disconnect converged with that. So I started saying this: we need to be for the woman and the child. And they were looking for a new president. I'd only been there a year, but the board started interviewing me for the position of leading the organization. And I said to the board, "If you choose me, we're going to be for the woman and child equally." And they were like, "Of course," because, what Christian would say we're not for the woman and child equally?
Right.
They were like, "Of course." And so they hired me, and we all thought, how hard can this be to be for the woman and child equally? Oh my gosh. One of the most difficult things I've ever done was to try and just sort through our practices, our reputation in the community, the way we communicated to donors, the way we communicated to churches. And really, it was an overhaul for me of why do we say we value the woman and child equally, but actually a lot of what we do and say in this conversation does not feel that way to me. It is not elevating women. And so from that place, kind of, it's not accidental because I do know why I'm passionate about it, but it was unexpected, I guess. God led me on this journey of really understanding that we have some theological wrong paradigms, and that those need to be adjusted first before I can even try to say, "Hey, let's change our practices." The practices were flowing out of mindsets and theology. And so I became passionate about that. That's the way I helped our whole organization transition to a counseling based model. It's how I would talk to our churches, and eventually developed what is now ProGrace. We initially developed with churches to use with our church partners, because I wanted our churches to be safe places if we would ever refer clients. And I realized that's actually my passion. My passion is very upstream, and it's about the church and why we're not perceived as safe for this conversation. We're not perceived as safe for people with lived experience. And so 10 years ago, then I started ProGrace to focus exclusively on that piece. And
Okay.
that's how I got here.
So I have many questions, but one is, you mentioned theological frameworks, and you mentioned that the church is perceived as not a safe place. Let's start with theological frameworks. Like,
Yes.
what are the theological frameworks that we get right and get wrong?
Yes. So again, this theological framework, we have a 4-part framework we walk people through, and so that equal value, equal dignity was the very first one that came to me, like I'm saying, my first year. And so where that is wrong is that we believe it at a head level, but we have not reckoned with the actual underlying misogyny that again, in the last, and this I didn't even know 20 years ago. This has been more in the last 8 years that I feel like I understand, like, oh, we're not going to get abortion right until we get equal value for women, equal image bearers, and we deal with this undercurrent of hidden abuse of women for centuries, probably, right? Like it's rooted. So that's why it's always been weird. People would give head assent to equal value, equal dignity, but then there would be other things happening where I'm like, oh wow, no, that's not valuing women. The other piece of this that I can now articulate is that in this conversation, you know, we are sometimes Democrat or Republican first, Christian second in the way we frame it. So our framing, our language, what we feel we have to say is really rooted in a political battle, not in shared Christian values. So that is another framework that I lead with is what are the shared Christian values? Like God creates all life. We all believe that as Christians. Now, we may disagree at exactly when that happens in the beautiful mystery of pregnancy, but at some point there are two people. And so as Christians, we should be able to come together and say, we believe this, can we work together? But often we don't work together because this other Christian is on the opposite political side. That hamstrings us, keeps us from talking to each other, dilutes our witness. The second piece of this, or the third, I would say, framework is a framework of grace. And the reason this was probably the second one I realized, and it was because of my background in legalism that I came into this work and was like, we are so condemning to the women. Like it's a completely wrong view and of why she feels she has to have an abortion, like how Jesus responds to people who are vulnerable and in a crisis was polar opposite. The John 8 passage that I talk a lot about in my book and my work was a very early recognition. I felt the Spirit kind of whisper to me, that's how I see the work you're doing here at the pregnancy organization, the reforms I was trying to make. And so as I dug deeper into that passage, it just reveals layer upon layer of a misunderstanding of who sinned, what's going on here. And everyone's been so cut and dry about what's going on with abortion. But when you take a grace lens, it really isn't. And that leads to the last part, which is this idea of shared responsibility. And that came out of years of research of why women have abortions, but also passages like John 8, where it's like, wait, did Jesus focus on one person at one time making a decision? Or did he zoom out into the kingdom of God and say, this is how we bear each other's burdens. This is how we live. And so that's actually a big piece that's missing from the Christian psyche around abortion is that if we truly think it's so important, which I do, we need to look at how we're all contributing to a culture that shames women, that blames women, that does not provide for women and children in pregnancy. We're at the bottom of the developed world for how we do, maternity leave and paid maternity leave and childcare expense. So that piece is another place where I just think that's been missing. When the Christian conversation has just been, are you pro-life or pro-choice? Is it moral or not?
Right.
We have not created this more robust theological framework. And we've treated it like an issue where Jesus sees this as people, including us.
Yeah.
And that's what a more robust theological viewpoint does.
Yeah. So I think like me and probably many of our listeners are like, but is it right or is it wrong?
I know.
When is it wrong? And I hear you saying that's not I want to say that's not the most important thing, or I don't know how would you frame that? How do you respond to that? But when or what should I tell people to do? What should I tell people to do? Right? That's what we want to be able to do.
I'm starting seminary in the fall. I actually literally hope to do my dissertation on why a misunderstanding of sin and individual responsibility for sin has messed up our thinking on many justice issues. Because, and I would say there is space. I welcome Christians who believe. I think Christians can have this conversation who believe it's wrong right after conception, who believe it's wrong at 12 weeks, 20 weeks, whatever it is. There's room for Christians to to talk about that, because the point is, what are we doing? If we think it's wrong, let me put this, Marcus.
Okay.
If we think it's wrong, whose responsibility is it? And what are we doing to ensure we live in a world where no one feels like it's their only choice? I guess that's what I send back to people.
Right.
The research we've done shows consistently for many, many women, they already are a parent, or they've already had a child. 60% have already had a child. 40% are regular church attenders. They're Christians. If they don't have a child, many of them want to go on to have a child. They are women like you and me, Marcus. They're us. It's not a certain quote unquote type of person. These are people just like you and me. But the situation that they're in when the unintended pregnancy happens, and the lack of support, the perceived shame that will come from their Christian community, the lack of education opportunities, the narrative I saw in that booklet that says your child will grow up to be a drug addict, if you're a single parent, all of that narrative comes crashing down on people, and abortion appears to be the only option. To me, the narrative is what's sinful, if we can talk about that. That's a sinful narrative. And I actually, if I can diverge and we'll come back, I know I wander, but I can see myself still. It was about 2008. We had some branding research done at the pregnancy organization, and it's really deep emotional inquiry, it's called. And I still remember them playing verbatim. It was a composite quote, but it was like a verbatim that a woman had said. And she said, "I felt so stupid. That's what I thought others would think of me, that I was stupid." And again, that was another Holy Spirit moment where that word lodged in my heart. And I was like, that's wrong. And it's somehow I knew then we have a part in doing that to her. We've done that to her. She didn't just wake up saying, "I felt stupid." That is however long, hundreds of years, millennia, thousands of years of narrative that it's the woman's fault, that she's morally, this were women, regardless of their faith persuasion, felt stupid, or that people would look down on them. That I guess was that first time. If people want to talk about the sin of abortion, it's the sin of that narrative, and we're all culpable in that.
Okay. Say more about that narrative, because I think, the narrative, here's from what I hear, even what I think of is, oh, she shouldn't have gotten pregnant. Right?
Yes.
And then it goes from there. So take it from there.
Okay. All right. I know, Marcus. So this is where we're now, and what you've told me about your audience is they can take it. We're going to go deep dive into the ugliness of misogyny, possibly patriarchy, in this whole pregnancy conversation. Okay. Who's responsible for the pregnancy? Exactly. So right there is a broken narrative that she is somehow responsible more than he is. And this was interesting in the research as well. They would not talk about their partner. So it was noticeable by omission. And the researchers noted it to us, like, she's talking as if she got pregnant on her own. That points to a very strong cultural narrative that a woman is responsible for preventing a pregnancy. Now, there's been there's work and research coming out that I'm really grateful for. There's a book. It's called Ejaculate Responsibly. You can get it on Amazon. And the author makes a brilliant point that is informing how I think about this. And that is, women can get pregnant, 3 days a month? Men can cause a pregnancy 24/7. For decades longer than a woman's childbearing age. They can do it by violence, and coercion and lack of consent. Where in the world did this narrative come from that it's her fault? And I would argue it's tied to all of this, the sexual wrong views of women, the temptress, the controlling of men. I don't know if your audience reads Sheila Gregoire, the work she's done on the Christian narrative that I grew up reading as a Gen Xer, that women are like the purity guards for men. That's like the Christian version of this ugly narrative, but it divides genders. It pits women against children, right? Because the pregnancy is now a problem and it's her problem. It's, it's from hell, I think. Like,
Yeah.
it's a satanic stronghold. And so if Christians can, once we step back and once you see this, you can't unsee it, and you'll start to see it in all of these places. But that's just a wrong narrative to think about this topic. Then the second narrative I would say that's incredibly destructive, and I don't know where this comes from. Is it American individualism or what? But that, like, hey, you made your bed, lay in it, raise this child, but raise them alone. Like, you got to deal with you got to deal with the fact you're going to lose your job, or you got to deal with the fact now you can't go to college, or we're not going to provide childcare for you. Like, it's such a talk about loading people up with burdens, as Jesus said, and then not lifting one finger to carry them. For Christians to have such a strong stance that you should carry this child and then to completely abandon the woman and the child after the birth is an incredibly destructive narrative. And again, I think we've been able to fall into something like that because it is easy to vilify women and be like, she did this. I mean, and this just happened in a review of my book where the reviewer was taking to task that I used the word agency in the book. And I've used it in a different context. It only appears a couple times in the book, but it really triggered her. And she said, well, her agency was when she had sex. That's her agency. She knew pregnancy was like a possibility from that. And I was like, oh my gosh, here's a woman who doesn't even know that she's under this weight of it's all her fault. She should know she's the protector. And now we're just going to tell her what to do and we're going to leave her.
Yeah. And so then how does that shape or form our response to women, and so I guess the question is, what's the relationship like between women and the church when women experience unintended pregnancies?
So there was a study done by Lifeway Research and many years ago, but I would still say it's relevant today. 7% of women approach a church for any type of support before an abortion decision.
Only seven?
Seven.
Okay.
Yeah. Ugh. 7. And then of church-going women, 16% approach their church. So the church isn't safe. And I'll tell you this, Marcus, even reading some early commentary, I might have been from a Lifeway author, people can find it online, but someone was commenting on that statistic and said, like, well, of course they wouldn't go to the church. They feel bad about what they've done. And I was like, really? We're not going to say that problem is in the church? Again, us being okay with that statistic and thinking, oh, that's this woman who made this bad decision. Of course, she's not going to come to the church. Is like, back to Jesus being our role model. Wow, we should be the first place people turn to in a time of need, because we understand grace and how Jesus views people. So the church is so interesting. It's so, parts of the church are so vocal about this, but so irrelevant, meaning parts of the church have thought your job is just to tell people it's wrong. Or to talk people out of it. But if nobody's coming to us or listening to us, so I don't know why people don't understand that. Like, we're having very little impact. And that is because, in my opinion, we're not resembling Jesus. We've picked up a combative, us versus them, good versus evil. And it blinds us from seeing people made in the image of God who are struggling. And that and this is where my dream started, Marcus, if the church would become the first place people would come to, what could God do with this entire abortion conversation, with the situation? Like, I believe much more positive change could happen from that than any law. And I was saying this before Roe was overturned. So now we're seeing states with very strict abortion laws, and the abortion rate isn't changing. Exactly for this reason. We haven't asked why. We haven't asked what community do we need to be to be support. And so we act like we're in this conversation, but in terms of people with lived experience, we're irrelevant. And the last piece I would say, the tragedy above tragedies that I've heard, I can't even tell you how many times I've heard this in 20 years, are the Christians, women and their partners and the men, who say, I mean, one couple said it like this: our parents told us never to come home pregnant. So, abortion is, it takes many different forms. It's also like, I was a pastor's kid and I saw how they talked about this issue and people facing unintended pregnancy. So when it was me, abortion was my only choice. There's so many people making this choice so it's like directly because of a faulty narrative in the church that and that's why the church, they want to focus on someone making the decision or like standing outside an abortion clinic. It's like, that's not when the decision's happening, when she's walking up to the abortion clinic. It's been happening for the last 20 years when she's heard everything her parents or her church says about how she will be received and treated, if she carries an unintended pregnancy to term. So that is the impact of the church right now. And the last thing I'll say is, I do believe that the number of women currently leaving the church, specifically Gen Z women, is tied to our response to abortion and everything that sits under women, how we view women. But it's specifically tender, I believe, in areas of reproduction and everything that touches. So sexuality, motherhood. There's so much brokenness coming out of the church with abuse and everything that women are like, I don't feel seen. I don't feel safe. The church isn't relevant. So.
I was thinking, as you're talking about, Dallas Willard talks about the gospel of sin management and how we do that to ourselves, I think, in a lot of ways. We try to manage our own sin, and we, in the sense that, if I get this wrong, then God will be disappointed in me, or so we do it to ourselves, and then we do it to other people too. And as a pastor, especially as a younger pastor, I felt this tension a lot. I'm like, I have to help people get it right. And if they don't, then I'm failing in some way. And it's, for me, it's taken a long time and a lot of, actually, of my own wrestling with my own brokenness to sort of disentangle that gospel of sin management from the way I think about the gospel and people and Jesus. And so what would you say to a pastor or church or ministry leaders who are like, but I have to help them get it right?
Well, I think that definition of what does it mean to get it right is really important to deconstruct here. The first thing is, I agree with you. When I was trapped under bondage of legalism, because it is it's spiritual bondage, I had to judge other people just to feel like I could stand anywhere near the presence of God, right? I mean, so it was as a knee-jerk reaction. Once I encountered the radical grace and love of Jesus, that stuff naturally fell off of me. Like, so again, if we're going to disciple people, let's first disciple our people into the love of God. I don't want to forget what I'm going to say. So I do want to come back to grace and truth. Can you remind me to talk about grace and truth?
Grace and truth. I got a question. I'm going to highlight it right here. On my
because
list.
that's part of this. But in this issue, getting it right, what does it mean to get it right? And if we go back to Jesus, what did he say were the greatest commandments?
Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself.
In this, all the law is summed up. And so I would argue, and I love Dallas Willard as well, that we can only love God when we understand his love. So I do think that is the first step. When we don't dumb down Christianity to an Old Testament Pharisaical version, but we actually talk about the new covenant and everything Jesus has done, and we experience the love of God, then we can love God with all our hearts. And a radical loving of our neighbor as ourselves is what we need to get right in this issue. I would argue that is where we have fallen the hardest. We have not loved our neighbor as ourselves. What if that was where we wanted to help people get it right? If Jesus was confident enough to say that all the law and the prophets hang on those two things, then what if we took our hands off and focused on those things. Now, I'm not saying that down the line it's not important to have this conversation. I think I'm not a pastor. Pastors do need to wrestle with what our church is going to talk about, human dignity, human
Mhm.
sexuality, all of these
Mhm.
pieces. It's just that when that's the first thing we talk about
Yeah.
and love is lost, that's not really getting it right.
Yeah.
Um, and then the last thing is like, if this issue is important to us and we want to see health and growth and flourishing, the pathway of love is actually the way to see that. Like we've
Yeah.
talked about, all these problems I just listed could be solved. There could actually be a new narrative. I mean,
Mm.
this is where I'm a meta dreamer, so I know I'm dreaming
Mm.
way out. But what if the narrative radiating from the church was, you are loved, you'll find dignity, we
Yeah.
welcome, there's a community that'll walk alongside of you.
Yeah.
What an amazing amount of human flourishing and getting it right could
Yeah.
happen when we lead with love and we are that
Yeah.
community.
Yeah.
So,
You know,
yeah.
I want to say also, I'm a pastor. I don't get everything right. I get many things I'm sure very wrong. But one area of growth for me has been in the area of understanding my belovedness and the
Mm,
belovedness of everyone
yes.
around me, to where,
Yes.
in a way, that when I think about my job, what's my job? My job is to help people know that they're God's beloved, and that's it.
Yes.
And then theology will take care of itself. Um, and yeah, and if that could be our reputation, I
Yeah.
think, like, oh, here's a place that's gonna help me know that I'm valuable and worthy, and I I I deserve, or I'm worthy of dignity and care and compassion. And anyway, if as opposed to, oh, they're just going to tell me what I did wrong or how I need to be better. Anyway,
Yes.
I hate that. I've
No.
grown to like, I shouldn't say I hate that. Anyway, go ahead.
Well,
It works me up though.
I'm almost on the verge of tears by your
Mm,
use of the beloved. So if
mhm.
we're okay, let's camp out
Yeah,
here.
yeah,
Um, so I told you my journey, just so
yeah.
legalistic. I so wanted to follow God. I thought I'd lost my salvation beginning in seventh grade. I'm not sure what I did that was so bad at 12 because I was such a straight
Mm,
laced kid. But
mhm,
that was, and I remember being in the campus ministry on a summer project, and they were teaching through First John. First of all, no one from my church had ever taught through First John. And I can see myself, I would have to leave these large group teaching events in tears because
mm,
no one had ever told me that God loved me like that. I mean,
mm,
it was a profound thought that God loved me. And that happened not once, but several times where I would hear that theology of the love of God. I would have to
mm,
leave crying because it almost overloaded my nervous system
mhm.
with the thing I didn't dare to be true was actually true all this time.
Yeah.
So that was my theological experience. But then I I remember telling God decades after that, okay, I believe it in my head, but something's blocking me from experiencing this in my heart. And now I know it's trauma. It was spiritual trauma from growing up that way. When something is so ingrained in you as a child, it does
Mm,
take a reforming. And I actually had, and I don't want people, I don't have these all the time, but I had an encounter with the love of God, with the person of Jesus, interestingly enough, at
mhm,
International House of Prayer in Kansas City,
mm.
which is so weird because Mike Bickle then later was accused
Yeah,
of violating women, which is so, I've had to wrestle with that, but it did
awful.
happen
Yeah.
there. And I felt for the first time, it was like Jesus just, he helped, he healed maybe what EMDR couldn't do
Mm,
in how
mm,
many years. And I felt his love. I felt like I was the beloved.
mm,
I felt like
mhm,
a schoolgirl
mm.
accepted. Like it was a very profound, it was in every cell of my body. It was cognitive, spiritual, emotional, physical, all of
Mhm,
that.
mhm.
Being the beloved like that then just has shifted the trajectory of my life.
Yeah.
And actually, after I came home from that conference where I had that experience, I had a dream, which again, this is not normal for me. And Dallas Willard
Mm,
says, God only speaks like this when he can't get our attention other ways. His preferred method is the still small voice, but I don't think I would have heard it. I wasn't getting it from that.
Yeah.
But I had a dream of the church looking on as the spirit of religion violated women. This is before I even worked at the pregnancy organization.
Wow.
So it's almost like my entire call is tied to being the beloved. And often I don't get the chance to go to that deep place, Marcus, because again, we get very cognitive about these issues.
Yeah.
But in my heart of hearts, I believe that if Christians knew that we were the beloved, and if we encountered Jesus, then we would be so radiant and attractive in this conversation in a way that could turn our society upside down. So I don't think it's any small thing. And since you brought it up, you gave me freedom to say, I think it is the thing. And that is why the enemy tries to blind us from the fact that we are beloved. It's why it's tattooed on my wrist, actually.
Oh, that's awesome.
Beloved.
What does it say? Beloved?
Beloved. And then I have, hold it up. Yeah. With the vine, the whole abiding that is, especially in this culture where things make me so angry. I get so angry about, let's say, how women are treated in the church, right? Like that anger can start to overwhelm me. And I have to remember, I'm the beloved. He's going to make everything right. I can just keep taking the next step with him. When we don't have that, that's when we get malformed. And we're seeing that play out in many places where people are Christians, but not acting like Jesus because we're not resting in that relationship with him and becoming more like him. So,
so you wanted to talk about grace and truth, but I feel like talking about the woman traditionally known as the one caught in adultery might fit into the conversation here too.
Well, that's where this came from. So so that John 8 passage, again, early on, I felt like God highlighted that. So when I did write the beginnings of the ProGrace training curriculum, that story made it in. And I still do this, still ask people to close their eyes as I read the story and picture what's happening there. So in the early days of doing it, people were responding and they were getting excited, but they would ask me, "Ooh, but what about grace and truth?" And they would always say, "But at the end, he did tell her, go and sin no more." And so I could see myself, I was in this church in Chicago, lovely church, lovely congregation, but they said, "Wait, what about grace and truth?" Like at the end of that passage. And so I said quickly in my spirit, "God, I am so sick of getting that question. I don't know why it bugs me. What do I say?" And immediately a question came to mind. And so I said it to the person. I said, "Well, okay, well, in light of what we've talked about, what a woman's experiencing, what truth would you tell her first?" And that the room was quiet. And then it was like they all said in unison that God loves her. And it shifted the atmosphere. And that's probably, oh my gosh, 16 years ago. And in that intervening time, it's like, well, why do we think that truth is pointing out where someone's wrong? That's actually not the scriptural. Jesus says, "I am the truth." And so it's everything about Jesus would be the truth. In addition, in John, where it talks about that, it says the law came through Moses. The law is what points out sin. Grace and truth as a package came through Jesus. So we are to contrast grace and truth from the law. And so again, just inviting Jesus. And so that was a really interesting example of me just finally, I was mad. I was sick of getting the question. It bugged me. I couldn't tell why. When I finally asked God for wisdom, he was so ready to give it. And that has shifted everything about this, because the truth is we are the beloved. Like that's why I thought of it when you went to the beloved. The truth is Jesus is beautiful. The truth is when he was with vulnerable people, he was so tender and he protected those people from abuse of power, from the religious leaders. That's the truth. So in that John 8 story, why is the truth everyone wanted to talk about that he says at the very end, "Go and sin no more"? Because what about the truth that the Pharisees really wronged that woman? They caught her in the act of adultery, which means a man was there. The law said both were to be stoned. So maybe it was a setup. We don't know how they found her. They bring her alone in violation of the law. they misquote the law to the Son of God, which I think is so gutsy. That shows incredible systemic injustice. Like, women had to be perceived as not worth anything. They were willing for her to get stoned. They were willing for her to die so they could trap Jesus.
Right.
Why does no one talk about that sin? And so that's what's so interesting, and where I think these wrong views of sin management, wrong views of women, just a blindness. And I think you're talking to the point in the book where I say, why is that story called The Woman Caught in Adultery? The main point is clergy abuse, right? The main point is the Pharisees trying to trap Jesus. But again, we just get in our minds, so the fact that the translators call it that, I believe, is a blind spot to what's actually playing out. And it really takes sitting with Jesus and his complexity and his beauty, I think, for those type of insights to start to rise up. I mean, it's taken me decades of hearing people go through that story for me to come to the point where I understand that. And so I just think there's so much more he has to show us about his person and his love, and the way that people are always going to try and trap Jesus, and they're always going to misquote scripture to do it. But he's the one who has the answer of what does the kingdom of God look like? Who is the Father? How does the Father see all of humanity? Those answers are found when we sit. I'm actually picturing Mary. When we sit at the feet of Jesus like she did, that's going to be our answer, where the truths come, where our minds are renewed. And then we have a new response to not only this issue, Marcus, but I've heard people say this framework could be applied to many issues. And it can. It's like a theology of justice, or a theology of, how we interact in a broken world in a way that puts people first over an issue.
But Angela, he said, go and sin no more. Shouldn't we tell people to do that?
Well, you know what? Here's the thing, Marcus. I think we follow the order of that story. So the order of that story is, there's first a cosmic sin. They're trying to trap Jesus. So first we want to make sure that we're right, that we're not letting any of that. The second layer of sin is a systemic injustice. And so let's look at that layer next, that they were able to abuse a woman, and no one even points that out in our Bibles, right? Like, that's because it's a baked in, underlying, been there forever systemic injustice. Then let's look at individual sin. What's the first individual sin he mentions? The Pharisees. Us. So let's deal with our sin first. So if we deal with cosmic, systemic, the individual sin of the believer, let's call it, then of course, let's have that conversation. But the other piece of this is, after Jesus turned everything on its head in that situation, Dallas Willard says, when she heard those words, go and sin no more, they were not like we're meaning them. Like, Angela, aren't you going to tell her? It was like freedom. Most likely she had been abused at some point in her life to get her to a place where she was able to be a pawn, right? For the Pharisees like this. So to see Jesus defend her, to see people drop their rocks because of what he did to her, for him to turn first, let's also look at what he says first to her. No condemnation. That instruction, and when I go to seminary, I want to understand what the Greek actually means, but I know that it would have felt life-giving and freedom, not us checking off a box. Did we tell her? Because again, it's the heart of God that's just, I feel like sometimes we get so myopic, and every time in scripture, Jesus is like, let's look at the big picture of the kingdom, the value people have, and that whenever they encounter Jesus, there's freedom, there's life, there's never condemnation. So.
I love that. So I guess the question then is, how do we do that? Like, how do we be the kind of people and pastors and churches that start by not condemning, noticing the sin, the more broad sin that brought this woman to this place, and what she needs now? Like, how do we, kind of broadly speaking, how do we do that? We've been kind of talking about that the whole time, but then also just very practically, how do we become those kinds of churches?
This takes me back to why I loved the podcast I mentioned at the beginning, because it is, if we will resemble Jesus in the abortion conversation, if that becomes our highest priority, we want to think, talk, and engage in a way like Jesus, then that is the starting place from a big picture. From a practical picture, this is what ProGrace exists to do. So we have different programs. We have a YouTube channel where I take these tough questions and walk them through the framework. We've talked about the book. We also have like a video course and discussion. I actually really believe in doing these things in community. So built into our programs is a lot of stopping and then asking people to talk about things. Or we listen to a Jesus story, not just John 8, but also in Matthew when he says, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, give to God's what is God. We sit and listen and wait, and what is he showing us? And so it's this, there is a proven pathway that we use at ProGrace that helps us, again, lay down our political labels and start from this shared value of we want to resemble Jesus, and then walk through these actual scriptures that once we understand them, it's not prescriptive or performative. It becomes natural then for us to act like Jesus. I think that so there is formula in what we do, but I'm convinced it has to be the spirit. Like it's done in a way, so I love Dallas Willard. It's done in a spiritual formation way so that we're not just absorbing information, we're actually being formed into more like Jesus as we think about these stories and how he interacted with people. So we'd be happy for any of your listeners to follow up with us. We have free resources, but just a lot of thought has gone into this over the last decade of how do we do exactly what you're saying, help Christians move through, take the sting out of the polarization first, and then walk through it in a manner that is much more truly discipleship than how are we going to view this issue.
Yeah. And if a pastor said to you, so I do want to encourage folks to check out all of those resources, and we'll put links to all that in the show notes too. If a pastor said to you, a young woman or a woman came to me and told me she was pregnant and didn't know what to do, and she's considering an abortion, and he or she asked you, what should I do, or how should I respond? What would you say to that pastor?
So I specifically don't say that early in conversations, but you and I have had enough of a conversation that we can talk about that, because that's it. Kind of like going to, the very end of John 8. It's interesting. People want to go there. So the first thing I'd say to that pastor is, well done that you've created an atmosphere in your community where a woman can come to you, because only 7% do, or 16% of church going. So be encouraged. Most people who ask me that question, no one ever will come to them or us, right? If we are not a welcoming space. And then the second thing is, I don't believe we need to say anything. We need to ask questions. So it's like, tell me more. What's going on? Why are you considering that? Is that what you want? Like, it is truly, and Jesus modeled this as well. It is asking questions and listening, because something is so deep and traumatic. We know this from the research. The response to an unintended pregnancy is an emotional crisis. And if pastors can understand that, there is so much turmoil going on, all the things we talked about, the narrative, the partner, where's the partner in this? Has she told her parents? How is she, like, women can't even see their future. It's like everything goes dark. And so if we understand this is a person in a very traumatic place, how would we want someone to treat us? We would want them to listen and not give us their opinion, but listen. And it brings me back actually to my work in the pregnancy center. There was one client that I didn't even know this happened to her, but she said it on a video. She said, I walked into the counselor there and she said to me, what do you need? And it stopped this woman in her tracks. She said, she didn't say, what are you going to do? She said, that's what everyone was asking me. Like, understand what's going on here is this, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? It's like, how about, what do you need? And thank you for trusting me with this. And you are still you. That's the most important thing, is that we maintain a position. Women think they've lost their entire identity if they continue a pregnancy. It's like, my life as I know it is over. So to be in a safe place where someone is still responding to them as them, they haven't lost their identity, and they have the dignity to be asked questions, and they have the support that if they say they need something, that person will help them find it.
Yeah.
We don't have to tell women, oh, abortion isn't what you want. It's not what women want. I think that's another different, nobody wants
Oh,
this.
yeah.
Nobody, that's not why it's happening. So that's just, again, a wrong thinking that if you just tell a woman the
Right.
morality of it or show them an ultrasound or whatever, it's like, no, women don't grow up thinking, I cannot wait to exercise my right to choose. Boy, I'm just,
Right.
it's happening because of all this other stuff. So I think, again,
Yeah.
seeing her, valuing her, supporting her will actually bring the best outcome for women and children. Actually, the
Yeah.
way we've handled this by trying to shake women is so
Yeah.
counterproductive that just giving pastors permission. And this was interesting in our staff. We had to help even they were trained counselors. It is that anxiety. Am I going to get it right personally? Right? Am I going to say
Yeah.
the right thing? And it's letting go and saying, God is here. He's here. So I can do what
Yeah.
Jesus did. And that is ask questions and meet a person with dignity and trust that
Yeah.
I don't have to protect and block. It's a much more gentle pastoral. I just have to be with someone
Yeah.
and help them feel seen.
And then some would ask, and does that help reduce the number of abortions if we listen
I
to
know.
people?
I know people. I know. And here's the thing. Again, I'm only saying this at the end of the podcast. I know,
Yeah.
and you can't pick this out. You can't cherry pick this for a short. Okay,
Okay.
Marcus, I'm going to say
Okay. I
that.
won't. I promise.
So the answer to that question is
That's very.
100.
I love how you're thinking ahead like that.
It's happened to
Anyway, go
me.
ahead.
It's happened
Okay.
to me
Okay.
before. So
Yeah.
100%, absolutely. Of course. I mean, if we give women what women need and we equal the playing field and we invite corporate responsibility and men, of course, there are going to be fewer abortions. The
Hmm.
reason I don't say that is because I don't want the woman and seeing her to be seen as a
Yeah.
means to an end.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
this is where, so
Yeah.
the thing about this conversation, it's been a zero sum game, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm either for the woman or the child, and,
Mm-hmm.
they're in conflict with each other. What's so beautiful about the kingdom of God, and why I love even how Dallas Willard talks about the kingdom of God, is this is not a zero sum game. By
Yeah.
listening to women, we don't compromise children. That's what's so beautiful about this, is that
Yeah.
the woman and child are intertwined. God has done that himself. When we honor that and we value them equally, there are going to be better outcomes for both of them. But if
Mm-hmm.
we go into this thinking we have to rescue children from a woman who is in some way morally faulty, that is
Mm-hmm.
completely wrong. And we're actually increasing the number of abortions doing that. So my answer is so nuanced because
Yeah.
I am very sensitive to any type of behavior or tactic that treats a woman as less important than the decision she makes about her
Yeah. Yeah.
pregnancy.
Yeah. Yeah.
She matters. And
Yeah.
when she is seen and heard and supported, of course, many women would be thrilled to not feel like abortion was their only option.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but I just am careful how I talk about it for
Yeah.
those reasons.
Yeah. I appreciate that. This is a broader topic. We're not going to go into it, but what I hear is there's this objectification
Yeah.
of the woman that happens, and the one of my pet peeves is that, and I try to resist it in myself, but churches do this with everybody. Like, people become giving units or attenders, right? I've had conversations, and this is a different topic, but lately about reaching out to the local university where they want them to show up in our church. But I'm like, yeah, but is that what they need? Like, what do the
Right.
college students, if we're gonna love college students, what do the college students need? What do we need, and what would make us feel good about ourselves? Oh, we've got college students, more of them in our church, Anyway, and so
Wow.
it makes us feel good when we can stop someone from having an abortion, but
Yes.
that's very ego driven, self-driven, our own needs.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm having an aha moment here. I'm really glad you used the word objectification. I've actually never applied that word to
Hmm.
what's happening in the specifically on the decision, but you're absolutely right. It becomes
Hmm.
about us, not about her. in the same way that sexual objectification becomes about the person doing the objectifying, right? It is, and maybe that's why, to me, I still wrestle with how tied those conversations are, right? And they really are, because we find it easy to treat people, it's dehumanizing, right? Yeah, to treat them as a means to an end. And I mean, kind of like wrapping up our whole conversation, it's like a means to an end so a Christian can feel like they got it right. Is that the way of Jesus? No, but that is exactly what is happening. And it's why it's such a strong, like, stronghold where some people just can't see straight anymore, because, like, I need this. I need my view on this as a Christian. I got to hang on this so I can keep my identity as a Christian, rather than seeing this person, these two people right in front of me who God loves immensely. You're absolutely right. It's objectification. Wow. Never tied that together. Yeah.
Well, Angela, I thank you very much for all of this. This has been really, really good. And what I appreciate, we didn't nail down, is abortion right or wrong? That's not what we did in this conversation, but we broadened our imagination of how to have conversations about abortion. And so I really appreciate that. And I think that's what we need. So I loved it when I heard your conversation, as I mentioned, with my friend Amy Fritz on her podcast.
Yes, love Amy.
I think it's called Untangled Faith. I'll tell people, go listen to that. It's a great podcast. Your book was fantastic. Becoming ProGrace, and remind me the subtitle.
Anyway, expanding the abortion conversation beyond life versus choice. Yeah.
And you mentioned some of your resources. If people did want to find out more about you, where can they go?
ProGrace.org is where is our website, and on that then has all the resources of our YouTube channel, the book, our programs. All of that is right there. So we'd love to connect with anyone, who wants to have a new conversation.
Awesome.
And I appreciate you, Marcus. Like, I love being able to talk about being the beloved, and then this last aha moment that I had. So I was blessed. Thank you.
Good. Well, thank you so much for being here, and I'm really grateful just for all the good work that you're doing. Well, thank you so much for being here. Hey, if this episode was helpful to you, I hope that you'll share it with another leader who needs to hear it. And if you want to go deeper on helping your church engage in God's mission in the way that your church is uniquely called and wired to reach your neighborhood, I want to invite you to grab a copy of my book, Beyond Thingification, Helping Your Church Engage in God's Mission. You can find that on Amazon. And you can also get a free study guide at marcuswatson.com/book, and that's Marcus with a K. The music you hear on this episode is by Derek Rice, and you can find his music on any streaming platform. And again, thanks for being here, and I'll see you next time here on Spiritual Life and Leadership.